got some snowdrops. A bunch of them together. I wonder if I went to that place near Cosden Beacon, would I see loads of these fellas? I think Cruelty pulled over in front of me. I think it's a bad pet owner. A guy with a truck with like 4 border collies. I think they're border collies. In a little cage. He pulled over. They're all in this cramped cage. They're waiting to go for a walk. They're very cute. He's just not been walking them. He's just pulled over. They can see the moor. They can see me. They can't move. They're cramped in together in this tiny 1 meter by 2 meter space, it looks like. And like, he's not coming out of his car to take them walkies. So I'm like, what am I doing here? I want to be walking. I've been here for 5 minutes now. It's like another 5 minutes later and the dude's still not walking his dogs. He's just trapped them in this cage. In this small box. They have a fresh air and a view, but they don't get to exercise. They don't get to free themselves from being cramped up in a confined space with all the CO2 floating around. They don't get to do anything. Feel the slightest bit of freedom. Poor little dog guys. I feel bad for them. The guy needs to get out of his car, or the woman, or whatever, and walk their dogs. We got Cruelty there, and we got Love there. So I've got to say something AnCap wise about this. Now, I'm not a socialist. I don't want to go full socialist. Actually, I was on Twitter recently, and one of my friends-ish, my Twitter friends, who is more of a conservative, really. Just basically, I mean, conservatives are basically kind of socialisty anyway. They're just not as full-blown as the progressive or leftist socialists. They're the rightist socialists, you know. But he went more leftist socialist the other day, and basically we kind of split. We split ways. And I'm not going to do that. If the principles were like, he thought all land in England by nature belonged to him and was shared property, which is absolute commie shit. So we parted ways over that, had a big disagreement. Anyway, I'm very principled against communism and against socialism, and I like my libertarian and AnCap views, which are, I don't interfere with other people's property, I leave other people's property where it is, and how I define property includes your pets are your property in the same way as your children are your property before they're age 18, because then they can consent and they gain self-ownership. They have informed consent about life to be able to own property. They start owning their own property rather than being owned by their parents and their parents de facto owning their property. They start owning their own property, etc. And with pets can't consent either. Like, that's why you have to say that, else it would, you basically, if you don't say that, then you're saying it would be good to like rape a pet or kill a pet or, you know, that sort of thing. Pets can't consent. So if you can't say that pets can't consent, then you're pretty fucking evil in my book. Anyway, what that means is that if you have a pet and you take it on as property, like your child, you have to look after it, you have to nurture it. You kind of have to control it as if it's an extension of yourself. You have to look after it, and nobody else outside of you and your family and your property gets to control your pets for you. Now, there's a flip side to that coin. There's a bit of a problem with that, which is what we're seeing here with these poor little guys. Is I kind of look at this and I'm sad. And I kind of want to intervene and do something. Like, I won't though, because I'm not a socialist. But these poor little dogs are trapped and they're not getting what they need from this pet owner. I see this as some kind of cruelty. You know, walk your dogs. Even if I had a cat, I would fucking take it out of the fucking car after a long journey, make sure it went to the toilet, make sure it could eat, make sure it could explore, exercise its legs, not be trapped. Look, it's trying to, like, this guy really wants to get out. He's like standing on the thing now. He's like getting his paws through the gap. He wants to get out. He wants to get out. Of course he does. Why would you want to be trapped in a little box with 3 other dogs and not get out and go places? Like, there's some dog walkers beside me right now. They're walking their dogs, and these ones are trapped, poor things. Got some dog walkers here. Oh no. Now we got barking. They want to be free, that's all. They want to be free. I don't think they're naturally aggressive. I think being in a cage like that would make them frustrated and aggressive. Look, those dogs are seeing the freedom that other dogs have. It's part of what I think is going on here. Those dogs are seeing the freedom that other dogs have. But as an AnCap, I can't intervene. It's that guy's property. If I tried to intervene to try and say, hey mate, you should be taking your dogs for a walk out there, what are you doing? Don't keep them in there. I mean, I'm not going to do that. It's their property. Like, I might gently suggest it in polite conversation if we were having a conversation, if I was talking to the driver about a different topic, but I'm not going to go over there and force him to take his dogs out there for a walk. But, I mean, they do need to get out for a walk, and it's just like, this is just a cruel pet owner, I think. This is just someone who has... he's just sitting in the front of his van, doing whatever he's doing. Like, maybe he's on his phone. I don't know if it's a he or a she, but maybe they are on their phone, browsing the internet. Maybe they're looking at the views of the church over there in the hills, and they know they've got 4 dogs in the back, trapped, not getting out. And they don't, like, even if they didn't want to walk, they should go out and get their dogs to have a walk, just so they've had their daily walk. It's also part of owning a dog, part of dog ownership, and I've never owned a dog, but I think it's really obvious, even not being a dog owner, is that if you, like, a dog is for life, not just for Christmas. If you take on a dog, you have to make sure you're taking it for a walk every day. And if you take on any animal, I don't believe you should cage it. This is why I think it's cruel if you're a cat owner to have an indoor cat in an apartment that never goes outside and just has litter trays and stuff, rather than an outdoor cat that is allowed to explore, create territory in gardens, hunt, go outside every day, whenever they want, have a cat flap or an open window that they can always get outside to, always have that choice, that freedom, that escape, that way to go out and go to the toilet in private whenever they want, however they want, to go and eat not just the cat food given by their owners, but also eat a mouse or a bird they've caught, to be what they are as that organism, which is not a human. And with a dog, walking is a very important part of it, smelling things is a very important part of it. I can see that without owning one. And so I just see cruelty here, especially when other dogs walk past these dogs and they're barking at each other. It's like, in their brains, if they have any degree of intelligence or sentience, is it? You know, they would just see other dogs like them and go, those dogs are free. I mean, I guess they're on leashes, they're being walked on their lead, but so that's some degree of non-freedom. And obviously the being of the pet, there's some degree of, you could make a case there's some degree of slavery there, in that we keep pets, but I think there's a way that we can keep pet and give them the maximum amount of freedom we can while we keep them, and this is not that. I don't think owning a pet is cruel if you're good to it, but I do think it's a kind of, there's something bad about it. There's control and there's slavery there for sure. I mean, they don't have to be our property. They are our property because of that non-consenting thing and them being a pet. but they don't have to be our property. They could be wild dogs, and they could be fully free, which means, you know, like a lion outside a cage in the Serengeti that isn't owned by anyone or tagged or whatever by a human. It's just allowed to roam in a nature reserve or something where humans aren't permitted to go and build into. That's as free as a lion can get, and that's freedom. And in that freedom, they are meant to be left alone, and they have the risk of dying by their own fortune or misfortune. Like, they could get gored by a wildebeest or something while hunting, or they could live a good life by their own choices and eat the wildebeest, get its meat, and you know, they could get stomped by an elephant, or they could choose that day not to go too close to the elephant, you know, and that's the freedom of the animal. Or the lion could be captured in a zoo, and then it is enslaved. Of course it's controlled, of course it's enslaved by humans, but you could say within that slavery of being essentially a pet, you could give it large swathes of land, you could make it as happy as you could as that human. You could choose to not intervene with its life, or you could choose every intervention you make into its life to try and be like something that you believe the lion likes, like, I don't know, stroking its neck, giving it food, keeping it warm, all that stuff. That's what pet ownership is. And there are degrees of cruelty and non-cruelty within the slavery of pet ownership. But as an AnCap, to be principled is for me to speak out against it with my voice and my speech, I guess, but not really intervene to try and stop it from happening physically. This has been a video about these 4 poor border collie dogs trapped in a cage in the back of a van.